I thought it got to be too messy. And I said it out loud. I think for a while, Club Shay Shay was like Wendy Williams with a weight set. Like,
Shannon better be glad that Shannon ain't interviewing Shannon on Club Shay Shay. This would be a clear diss towards Shannon's recent assault accusations.
If you say that one more time, I'm going to choke out of you when I see you.
That he is completely innocent of the allegations that have been levied against him. I can't sit here and speak to his innocence or guilt.
I saw Stephen A. Smith kind of talking shit.
I done told y'all that this is a shakedown of the highest order. And to be frank with you, I think that the entire legal team, what is his name, Busby? I think that they all need to be investigated.
I'm letting the successful black men out there know that they are coming through you, through your
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you got freaky better.
Because this is freaky.
Yeah, we've seen it.
Yeah, Michelle told us.
She said it. Yeah.
Michelle told us that he was freaky.
There's a storm brewing in the world of sports media, and its name is D.L. Hughley. In less than 48 hours, a comedian turned cultural sniper just tore into one of the most respected voices in sports, Shannon Sharpe.
What is you doing, Unc? You ain't got no business out here with no 20-year-old white girl, with no 20-year-old period. Nothing wrong with being no freak, but be a freak and it makes sense.
What started as a rumor became a headline. What started as a headline became an inferno. And now that fire is creeping into boardrooms, locker rooms, and legal chambers across the country. Allegations? Yes. Denials? Of course. But it was D.L. Hughley's microphone, blazing with fury, humor, and receipts, that changed the game. Not just calling out the accusations, but dismantling the public persona of a man many called untouchable. This isn't just about one man's reputation. It's about power, protection, and what happens when someone who spent years critiquing others finally gets critiqued himself. So what did DL say that hit so hard? What are the accusations that sent Shannon's empire into chaos? And why are major sponsors, networks, and fans suddenly jumping ship? Let's break it all down, because this isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning. D.L. Hughley didn't ease into it. He kicked off his national broadcast like he was dropping a hammer on marble. What are you doing, Unc?
What you think she was gonna do? She charging $25K a cheek, and it ain't no cheeks. No cheeks, and she ain't got no lips. She probably whistle when she talk.
With that one line, the tone was set. DL wasn't joking. He wasn't hedging. He was aiming straight at Shannon Sharpe, and the gloves were off. He mocked the optics first, Sharpe's lifestyle, the rumors about dating women half his age, and the idea that being successful somehow makes you untouchable. Ain't nothing wrong with being a freak, DL said, but be a freak that makes sense. It was raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. But beneath the jokes was a very pointed critique. DL wasn't just roasting Sharpe for clicks, he was dragging hypocrisy into the light. The man who spent years calling out other athletes for bad behavior was now the one on trial, figuratively and possibly literally. And Hughley made it clear, the same energy Shannon had for others was about to boomerang back on him. It wasn't just commentary, it was strategy. DL didn't go after the legal case first, he went after the character, the pattern, the double standards. He reminded listeners that this wasn't the first time Sharpe's name had been tangled up in controversy. It's just the loudest, and the loudest always hits different. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as Shannon Sharpe's media career was reaching new heights, a second wave of allegations surfaced, and this time they came with receipts, court filings, text messages, photos, all pointing to an incident from nearly a decade ago, now being framed as coercive, calculated, and deeply damaging. Sharpe's legal team wasted no time. They called the claims defamatory, opportunistic, and flat out false. But before their first statement had even finished trending, a second accuser stepped forward, escalating the situation from serious to potentially catastrophic. The documents weren't anonymous leaks from the shadows. They were backed by legal reporters, verified timelines, and corroborating evidence. A party in Los Angeles, a VIP area, a digital trail that suggested everything happened exactly where and when the accuser claimed. And while Sharpe's side dismissed the whole thing as a money grab, DL wasn't buying it. He saw a familiar playbook: deny, deflect, and distract. And he made it clear to his audience, this wasn't about believing blindly, it was about consistency. About applying the same scrutiny to Sharpe that Sharpe once demanded of others. Because when the receipts start showing up, opinions start shifting fast. Within hours, the internet did what it does best: turn controversy into wildfire. Hashtags exploded. TikTok creators were stitching clips from D.L. Hughley's rant alongside courtroom breakdowns, old interviews, and even memes. On X, Sharpe's name shot to the top of trending, right next to phrases like accountability, double standard, and cancel culture. It didn't take long before people started digging. clips from Club Shay Shay, quotes from past interviews where Sharpe publicly criticized athletes for their off-the-field behavior, juxtapositions of his commentary versus his current silence. And just like that, the narrative began to shift. Some fans stood by him, calling the allegations baseless and warning against trial by social media. But others, many others, weren't so forgiving. They didn't want vague legal statements, they wanted specifics, they wanted clarity, and most of all, they wanted honesty. DL Hughley didn't stay quiet either. He reposted the trending hashtags with a simple caption: "You can't run from the same standard you built." The message was loud, the pressure was mounting. And what started as a broadcast takedown had now morphed into a full-blown digital reckoning. DL Hughley didn't just call Shannon out, he held up a mirror. For years, Sharpe sat behind a polished desk in designer suits, dissecting the decisions of young athletes, questioning their maturity, their choices, their morals. He built an empire on being the voice of reason in a reckless world. But now, the same microscope he once pointed at others is aimed straight at him. DL didn't let that irony slide for a second. He played back clips of Sharpe criticizing NFL players caught in scandals, calling for zero tolerance, demanding accountability, urging transparency. And then he asked the question everyone was thinking: where's that same energy now? He zeroed in on the statement Sharpe's team released, calling it strategic, vague, and intentionally murky. No dates, no direct denials, just broad brushstrokes and legal posturing. To DL, it wasn't just weak, it was calculated silence. Because the truth is, today's audiences don't fall for boilerplate PR anymore. Not when they've seen it 100 times, not when fabricated and opportunistic sound more like spin than substance. And DL made one thing brutally clear: you can't coach accountability Monday through Friday, then run the clock out when it's your turn to answer. The credibility Sharpe once weaponized had now become his liability. Behind the scenes, it wasn't just fans watching closely, it was corporations. The moment the second allegation dropped, panic hit Sharpe's business empire like a tidal wave. Club Shay Shay announced an immediate pause on all upcoming episodes. No details, no timeline, just a vague memo citing internal review. Translation: they were bracing for impact. Within hours, whispers started leaking from inside his media network. Emergency meetings, legal teams scrambling, executives caught between ratings and risk. Shannon wasn't just a TV personality, he was a revenue engine. Over $60 million in annual ad dollars were tied to his name, and now that name was becoming toxic. Sponsors gave ultimatums: clarify or we pull out. One by one, brands started issuing statements. Carefully worded concern, paused partnerships. Zero tolerance policies suddenly became buzzwords again, and with each new headline, the perception shifted further. The question wasn't just, is he guilty? It was, is he worth the risk? Because in the cold world of corporate calculus, bad press isn't just bad, it's expensive. And Shannon Sharpe, once seen as bulletproof, was now being viewed through a very different lens. DL Hughley summed it up in a single line: when the money gets quiet, you better start talking. Most people would have let their first viral rant do the talking, not DL Hughley. He came back the very next day, even sharper, even louder, and this time he brought context, quotes, and conviction. He wasn't just calling Shannon out, he was building a case, line by line, statement by statement. And it hit harder because this wasn't coming from a gossip site or a tabloid, it was coming from someone with credibility. He tore into Sharpe's vague denial, mocking the safe legalese and pointing out how it dodged the real questions. He questioned the silence from Sharpe's co-hosts. He challenged the networks profiting off controversy while pretending to stay neutral. You can't run a debate show every morning and then duck debate when it's about you, he said. The response was massive. Phones at DL's studio lit up. Listeners called in, some furious, some conflicted. Social media split into battle lines. One side defending Sharpe's right to due process, the other demanding he face the same fire he used to aim at others. Clips from DL's broadcast were reposted millions of times. Even people who'd never listened to his show before were quoting him. He had stepped into the void and taken control of the narrative, not as a comedian, but as a cultural judge, jury, and loudspeaker. And here's the kicker. DL wasn't speaking for clicks. He was speaking for accountability, and people were listening. After days of silence and mounting pressure, Shannon Sharpe finally spoke up. But when the moment came, it didn't land the way he needed it to. Instead of a live statement or a sit-down interview, Sharpe released a carefully edited, pre-recorded message. It was under 2 minutes. No questions, no specifics, just vague reassurances, legal buzzwords, and a familiar refrain. I deny the claims. I've always tried to uplift the community. It was polished, it was safe, and to a lot of people, it felt hollow. The broadcast cut away almost instantly to a highlight reel of Sharpe's greatest TV debates, like nothing had happened. No commentary, no follow-up, just a montage. But viewers weren't in the mood for nostalgia. They wanted answers. The reaction was swift. Fans flooded social feeds with disappointment. Some called it a cop-out. Others said it looked more like brand protection than truth-telling. And DL Hughley, he didn't hold back. If you've got nothing to hide, he said, why are you hiding behind edits? He argued that if Sharpe really wanted to clear the air, he would have taken live questions, faced the audience, showed up raw and real. Instead, what they got felt like damage control wrapped in a soundbite, and the damage wasn't done. Within hours, two of Sharpe's biggest sponsors, Apex Fit and Titan Life, publicly suspended their partnerships. Quiet conversations in corporate boardrooms were now full-blown PR crises. And the message was clear. Silence doesn't protect your reputation anymore. Transparency does. As the current allegations took center stage, the internet did what it always does. It went digging. And what it found wasn't pretty. Clips from the early 2010s resurfaced. Interviews from Sharpe's playing days, comments about relationships, women, dominance, some cringeworthy, others unsettling in hindsight. Then came the paperwork, a 2011 domestic dispute restraining order that was ultimately dismissed. No charges filed, no conviction. But to many, the dismissal didn't mean the issue was dead. Critics pounced on the pattern. Unproven, they argued, doesn't mean it didn't happen. D.L. Hughley jumped right on it. He reminded listeners that legal outcomes don't always match moral outcomes, that a courtroom dismissal doesn't erase behavior, it just means it wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt. He posed a powerful question. How many times do we excuse patterns before we admit we're avoiding the truth? Supporters of Sharpe pushed back hard. They said it was unfair to bring up old cases with no convictions, that dragging up past rumors was character assassination, that without evidence, it's all noise. But DL didn't flinch. He wasn't claiming guilt, he was demanding consistency. If you built a brand on holding athletes accountable, he said, you don't get a pass because your suit fits better and your words are smoother. It wasn't just Shannon's present on trial anymore, it was his past, and everything he hoped people had forgotten. While the internet erupted and D.L. Hughley poured gasoline on the fire, one group remained suspiciously quiet. Shannon Sharpe's colleagues, the co-hosts, the guests, the insiders. People who had built shows, brands, and chemistry alongside him suddenly vanished from the conversation. No public support, no defense, just silence. And that silence spoke volumes. D.L. Hughley didn't miss a beat. He pointed it out on air with razor-sharp clarity. If your brother's character was under fire and you knew the truth, you wouldn't need a press release. You'd ride for him instantly. It was a direct shot. Not just at the industry, but at the so-called brotherhood that Sharpe often championed. If your crew won't speak up when you're cornered, are they protecting you or protecting themselves? Behind the scenes, reports started leaking. Rumors of internal tension, disagreements over creative control, conflicts over money, and a growing sense that some partners were just waiting for the storm to pass, without getting their hands dirty. It didn't help that past Club Shay Shay episodes were mysteriously disappearing from streaming platforms. Episodes featuring certain guests, certain topics, cleanup mode was clearly underway. And the fans noticed, comment sections filled with questions. Why is no one standing beside him? Where's all that loyalty now? What are they not saying? It was no longer just about what Shannon Sharpe said or did. It was about who stuck around when the heat got real. And for now, most of them were nowhere to be found. With his name trending for all the wrong reasons and sponsors backing away, Shannon Sharpe did what many high-profile figures do when the pressure boils over. He counterattacked. His legal team filed a defamation lawsuit targeting the accuser directly and signaling that they weren't just going to play defense. The message? We're not just denying this, we're going after it. But that move came with consequences. Legal analysts warned immediately, countersuing in a case like this is a double-edged sword, because once you file, you open the door to discovery, to subpoenas, to cross-examinations, to digging deep into emails, texts, private conversations, even old footage from parties and interviews. If there's any skeletons, one lawyer said, that subpoena will find them. D.L. Hughley echoed that warning on air, pointing out that in today's media climate, a defamation suit isn't always a power move. It can be a panic button, because now the clock is ticking. Depositions will come, private details will be on record, and if there's anything in Sharpe's past that doesn't line up, anything shady, suggestive, or contradictory, it could explode under legal scrutiny. Worse still, if his accusers are telling the truth, discovery might give them even more ammunition than they had before. And DL wasn't shy about saying it out loud. You don't throw a rock at a hornet's nest unless you're real sure there ain't nothing inside. The legal fight was on. But it wasn't just about proving who was right anymore. It was about surviving the spotlight when the rules change and every move becomes permanent record. By now, this wasn't just about Shannon Sharpe. This was bigger, way bigger. D.L. Hughley made that clear in his next broadcast. He widened the lens, pulled back the curtain, and asked a question that hit deep. How many other stars are hiding behind the same system that protected Shannon Sharpe until it didn't? Because what we were watching wasn't just one man's fall from grace, it was a case study in how fame, media, and money can insulate someone for years, until suddenly they don't. DL laid it out. Sharpe had spent the last decade critiquing other athletes, calling out locker room behavior, demanding accountability, and the networks loved it. They profited from it. Now those same networks were scrambling, suspending episodes, releasing vague statements, hoping the storm would pass without blowing the roof off their own house. And DL didn't let them off the hook. He called out the double standards, the corporate complicity, The way leagues, networks, and sponsors use outrage as currency, but only when it's convenient. This ain't just about Unk, he said. It's about the whole damn machine that props guys up until they're no longer profitable. He even questioned the culture of silence around retired athletes turned media personalities. No drug tests, no codes of conduct, no oversight, just charisma and camera time. And when things go wrong, the playbook is always the same. Deny, delay, distract. But now, people aren't buying the script anymore. Just when things seemed like they couldn't escalate any further, they did. Federal investigators confirmed they were now monitoring the case. Not because of Sharpe's fame, not because of the headlines, but because some of the alleged incidents may have crossed state lines, triggering interstate jurisdiction. And with that announcement, everything changed. Up to this point, the situation was a civil matter, messy, public, reputationally brutal, but contained. Now, the specter of federal involvement brought a whole new level of pressure. Search warrants, phone records, bank transactions, travel logs, all in play. Shannon Sharpe's legal team tried to downplay the news, calling it routine, but investors weren't buying it. Shares of the network's parent company dipped, ad executives grew skittish, and major sponsors started making quiet exit plans. DL Hughley responded the way only he could. Money listens when the feds start whispering. And that whisper, it was turning into a roar. What started as tabloid drama was now sitting in the lap of federal law enforcement. And if anyone around Shannon thought this was going to blow over, they were now facing a much colder, more dangerous reality. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a case. And the people watching weren't just fans and followers anymore. They were agents, attorneys, and prosecutors. And they don't scroll past drama, they build cases around it. As the federal interest grew, so did the courage of people who had stayed quiet until now. A non-profit advocacy group known for supporting survivors and workplace transparency revealed something chilling. Their anonymous tip line had been flooded with calls, and a name kept coming up: Shannon Sharpe. Production assistants, event staff, former co-workers. Some had stories, others had questions. All of them had one thing in common: they weren't staying silent anymore. What began as a single civil case was now cracking open a wider conversation about what happened off camera, about who saw what, and about who helped protect it. DL Hughley wasted no time responding. He went live and issued a challenge, one aimed at everyone who might have been in the room. If you saw something, say something. Whether it clears him or condemns him, the truth needs witnesses. This wasn't about piling on, it was about lifting the lid off a culture where red flags were ignored as long as ratings soared. And here's what made it even more intense. Some of the tips weren't about the accusations, they were about the cleanup afterward. Deleted footage, scrubbed text chains, pressure to stay quiet, NDAs, HR reports that vanished. The machine that once protected Sharpe was now under scrutiny itself. And for the first time, it wasn't just about what he did, it was about what others let him do. Because in scandals like this, the spotlight doesn't just land on the star, it lands on everyone who handed him a mic and looked the other way. Facing mounting pressure from the public, sponsors, and now federal eyes, Shannon Sharpe's primary network finally made a move they couldn't avoid any longer. They announced an independent investigation. On paper, it sounded strong. A retired federal judge would oversee the probe. All workplace conduct would be examined. Nothing was off limits. But DL Hughley wasn't impressed. He raised a skeptical eyebrow and asked the question on everyone's mind. How independent can it be when the people being investigated are signing the checks? He reminded listeners that this wasn't the first time a network claimed transparency while carefully controlling the outcome behind the scenes. He demanded the findings be published in full, unredacted, with names and details, not just a sanitized executive summary that protects everyone but the truth. And he wasn't alone. Legal analysts echoed his concern. Advocacy groups called for third-party oversight of the investigation itself. Former staffers began reaching out to journalists instead of HR. Because here's the reality. These kinds of internal reviews aren't about justice. They're about optics. And if a network has tens of millions tied up in a brand, their first instinct isn't disclosure, it's damage control. Still, DL gave them one chance. If this investigation is real, prove it. Show us every uncomfortable detail. Show us what you'd show the court. Because anything less, it's not accountability. It's just another PR stunt wrapped in legal jargon. And the public, they've seen too many of those to be fooled again. By the time the investigation was announced, the damage was already done. Shannon Sharpe released a statement saying he would step away from all on-air duties indefinitely. He framed it as a personal decision, a move to protect the integrity of the conversation. But DL Hughley wasn't buying the hero narrative. Integrity isn't what you protect after allegations, he snapped. It's what prevents them in the first place. Sharpe stepping down wasn't noble, it was necessary. Because the walls were closing in, sponsorships were frozen, viewership numbers were unstable, and even his most loyal fans were now asking hard questions. Behind the scenes, the network began drafting contingency plans, backup hosts, format changes, new PR strategies. No one said it out loud, but the message was clear. They were preparing for a future that didn't include Shannon Sharpe, and the ripple effect didn't stop there. Youth organizations once tied to his name quietly distanced themselves. Charities postponed appearances, brands initiated morality clause reviews on other celebrity partnerships, afraid they'd be next. In a single week, Sharpe's empire, built on credibility, charisma, and consistency, was teetering. But here's what DL kept hammering home. This wasn't just about one man, it was about an entire ecosystem that gives men like him unchecked power, until that power becomes a liability. And now, that ecosystem is bleeding. The future of Shannon Sharpe isn't just uncertain, it's unraveling. And whether he rebuilds or disappears, the blueprint has already changed. Whether Shannon Sharpe clears his name or not is still unknown. The courts will do what courts do, but in the court of public opinion, the verdict is already shifting. Because this isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about power, perception, and how quickly fame turns fragile when the spotlight flips. DL Hughley didn't just comment on the moment, he cracked it open. He exposed the double standards, the sanitized PR, the silent co-signers. He reminded everyone that being beloved isn't a shield anymore. In 2025, silence isn't golden, it's gasoline. And the public, they're done playing passive. Corporate apologies aren't enough. Pre-recorded denials don't hold up. And reputations built on calling out others won't survive being called out themselves, unless they meet the moment with truth, not spin. Sharpe may one day return to the screen. He may rebuild, rebrand, and rewrite his story, but the world he's returning to has changed. The audience is smarter, the internet has receipts, and the culture that once whispered around scandal now demands a microphone. As DL Hughley said in his final segment, we need fewer idols and more mirrors.